It was 2:30 on a grey Tuesday afternoon in Brighton when my phone buzzed with a message that sent a chill down my spine. I was in the kitchen, cradling a mug of tea, trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace. My daughter Isabel was supposed to be at college, attending her sociology seminar. Instead, she had texted me something that twisted my stomach into knots. "Send me the money now or I'll go through with it." No joke this time. I googled how to fake it, but if that doesn't work, I won't fake anything. I dropped the mug. It shattered on the tiled floor, hot liquid splashing my slippers. I stood there frozen, staring at the screen, my breath caught between disbelief and dread. Isabel had always been intense. Passionate, dramatic, obsessive. But this was beyond anything I had seen before. I scrolled up the thread. Her earlier messages had started innocently enough. She wanted to buy VIP tickets to see Evan Hale, the pop singer she idolized. He was doing an exclusive show in Manchester, with a £2,000 meet and greet package. I told her we couldn't afford it. Her tone shifted within seconds. Then came the threat. This wasn't the first time she'd pulled something like this. I'd spent nights pacing hospital corridors, sleepless and aching, wondering whether the blood was real or performative. There had always been a pattern: drama, then guilt, then silence. This time, though, she'd left a breadcrumb. The word, Google. I walked into her room, which still smelled faintly of perfume and hairspray. Her laptop was open. She never logged out. My hands trembled as I sat down and opened the browser history. There it was, plain as day. How to make a fake suicide look real. Lethal dosages that look like accidents. Inheritance law UK, how long after a death? I felt my pulse throb in my ears. My knees weakened. For a second, I thought I might faint. This wasn't a cry for help. It was a blueprint. A plan. Something meticulous, cruel, and targeted. I didn't know whether she truly wanted to harm herself or me. But I knew something else: I couldn't allow this to go on. This was no longer about concert tickets or outbursts. It was about survival. She had no idea, of course, that I'd been keeping notes. Journals. Recordings. Screenshots. For over a year, I had documented everything, every manipulation, every lie, every demand for money accompanied by threats of self-harm. Because deep down, I had feared this moment would come. I shut the laptop and stood up. Something inside me had shifted. No more fear. No more apologies. If Isabel thought she had the upper hand, she was wrong. I had already started building my own escape. And it had a trap woven perfectly into the center. The morning after the message, I didn't go to work. I called in sick and instead stood by the front window, watching the rain trickle down the glass like cold fingers. Isabel hadn't come home the night before. I hadn't called her either. For once, I wanted her to feel the silence. At 9:45, she stormed in, soaked and furious, her blonde hair plastered to her cheeks. She dumped her wet bag on the floor, kicked off her boots, and slammed the door with the force of someone auditioning for tragedy. "You ignored me," she hissed, her voice shaking with fury. "You think I won't do it? You think I won't prove it to you?" I looked at her, not with fear, not with pity, but with something far colder. Resolve. "I know you won't," I said calmly. "Because it's never been about that, has it? It's about control. And money." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I'm bluffing?" I didn't reply. I just picked up the envelope I'd prepared the night before. It was sealed, thick, and addressed to my solicitor. I placed it silently on the counter between us. Her gaze flicked to it, then back to me. "What is that?" "It's my statement," I replied. "Every text, every threat, every time you used pain to get money." "I'm done, Isabel." For a moment, her face faltered. Then came the tears, loud, ugly sobs that she always summoned when her temper didn't work. She collapsed onto the kitchen floor, clutching her stomach like she was physically in pain. I didn't move. I simply stepped over her and left the room. Upstairs, I opened the cupboard in the spare bedroom and retrieved a small tin box tucked beneath a pile of old scarves. Inside were copies of chat logs, voice notes, screenshots from bank transfers, evidence spanning months. I had always hoped I'd never need them. But Isabel had pushed me too far. That afternoon, she locked herself in her room. I heard things crashing, likely the picture frame with the photo of her and her father at the London Eye, the one she used to keep on her bedside table. Gareth had always been a ghost who only appeared when Isabel needed drama to amplify. He was her template. The first person she learned manipulation from. Later, I found myself staring into the mirror in the hallway. I looked like myself, but I didn't recognize the woman in the reflection. She was pale. Her eyes sunken. Hair in disarray. But it wasn't age or fatigue. It was something deeper. When did I stop being her mother and start being her hostage? I thought of the time Isabel screamed at me for refusing to buy her a designer handbag. She threw a glass at the wall and threatened to post lies about abuse online. She knew I worked in child services, knew how one whisper could ruin my entire career. And yet, I had stayed silent. Again and again. No more. That evening, I logged into my solicitor's online portal and uploaded the files. I requested a formal session to revise my will, remove Isabel from my emergency contact list, and begin the process of transferring my estate into a trust. My hands were steady the entire time. Downstairs, the music blared from her room, Evan Hale's latest single. Over and over. That familiar beat, now a taunt. She had always said one day she'd meet him and he'd save her from her awful life. She had no idea her awful life had been shielded, preserved, even padded, by me. But the shield was cracking. And the trap I had prepared was beginning to tighten. A week passed. The silence between us grew thick like damp fog on the cliffs of Dover, always present, heavy, and suffocating. Isabel moved around the house like a ghost, slamming doors, playing her music at deafening volume, and occasionally muttering things under her breath when she thought I wasn't listening. But I heard everything. I had begun documenting it all, recording snippets on my phone, jotting down timestamps, backing up files into a private drive. I wasn't just preparing to defend myself anymore. I was preparing to be free. It was 2 days before Isabel's 18th birthday when she finally spoke to me like nothing had happened. "Mum," she said one morning, her voice bright like a child asking for a sweet. I was thinking, maybe we could do something special this year. I raised an eyebrow. She fluttered her eyelashes and gave a little laugh, too forced to be genuine. "You know. Just the two of us. A spa trip, maybe. Something relaxing." It was bait. So obvious, I nearly laughed. "Isabel," I replied slowly, "I think we both know there's nothing relaxing about the way you treat people." She pouted. "You're being cruel." I didn't flinch. "I'm being honest." But later that night, I received a message from Gareth. "She's staying with me after the party. Be civil. One night won't kill you." I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. He was a shadow of the man I'd once loved, lost beneath debts and lovers and a short fuse. But he still had a way of slithering into Isabel's life whenever she needed to stir things. The next day, Isabel showed me an event page on her phone. "Look," she said, beaming. "It's a birthday dinner. Not just us. Friends too. Gareth hired a hall in Hastings. Classy, right?" The screen showed a venue called the Lantern Room, all glass walls and exposed beams, perched over the coast. It looked expensive. My chest tightened. "I didn't agree to this," I said quietly. "But you will," she smiled. I've told everyone. Even Evan Hale's management team. They said he might drop in if he's in the area. She said it so casually, like it was inevitable. Like the arrival of a pop star would redeem all the chaos she had sown. I nodded slowly. Then I suppose I'll be there. What I didn't tell her was that I had already informed the local authorities. I gave them a copy of the chat logs where she'd threatened self-harm, accused me of abuse, and Googled fatal accidents. I'd also contacted the venue, requesting a quiet corner where I could remain unnoticed. Because something was coming. And I needed to be ready. The night of the party arrived. I wore a long navy dress and pinned my hair back neatly. As I approached the lantern room, the lights inside glowed gold through the coastal fog. Guests were already mingling. I saw Gareth, drink in hand, laughing too loudly. Isabel stood at the entrance in a silver gown, smiling like royalty. She spotted me, rushed over, and hugged me tightly. That alone told me something was terribly wrong. "Mum," she whispered, "thank you for coming. You won't regret it." The words crawled down my spine like ice. Something in her tone, in her touch, in the way she kept glancing behind me. I turned slowly, but saw nothing. Not yet. But I knew the performance had begun. And the next act would be mine. The music at the lantern room swelled with artificial cheer. Fairy lights glittered from every beam, and candles flickered on white-draped tables. Laughter bounced off the glass walls, but it all felt distant, muffled, like I was watching from beneath water. I kept to the shadows. From my corner seat near the caterer's entrance, I had a clear view of Isabel. She glided from guest to guest, sipping mocktails, whispering behind manicured hands. Gareth strutted beside her like a proud father at a debutante ball, oblivious, or pretending to be. Then came the moment I'd expected. Isabel stood at the center of the room, tapped a fork against her glass and called for silence. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I know I've been intense lately. But tonight is about love, forgiveness, and moving forward." Applause. "I've prepared something special," she continued. "A little video tribute to everyone who's stood by me." A projector screen descended behind her. My chest tightened. The lights dimmed. A slideshow began, childhood photos, holidays, school plays. Isabel and me, Isabel and Gareth, Isabel alone. Her voiceover played softly in the background, filled with gratitude. Until it wasn't. The screen flickered. Then the footage changed. Suddenly, we were watching shaky mobile phone recordings, me raising my voice, slamming a cupboard, Isabel crying in her bedroom. Heavily edited. Twisted. Stripped of all context. Murmurs rose from the guests. I felt every eye in the room shift towards me. Then came the final slide, a screenshot of a message that read, "Maybe I just won't wake up tomorrow. Maybe that's what she wants." Gasps. One woman began to cry. Isabel bowed her head, tears glistening under the spotlight. And then she collapsed. Right there on the floor. The room erupted in chaos. Gareth pushed through the crowd, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. Two guests dropped to their knees. Someone spilled wine across the parquet floor. I didn't move. Because I knew. It was all staged. The fall, the tears, the footage, every bit of it a trap. She wanted pity. Sympathy. Proof for Gareth and the authorities that she was unsafe under my care. I slipped out the back entrance and leaned against the cold brick wall. The sea wind slapped my cheeks. I rang the officer who had helped me file the safeguarding report last week. "She's just collapsed during a performance," I said flatly. "Ambulance is on its way." "But it's fake. You'll find the projector was wired from her phone." I heard the pause on the other end. "Understood," came the reply. "We're already en route." I hung up. Back inside, paramedics wheeled Isabel out on a stretcher, eyes closed but lips twitching ever so slightly. Gareth tried to follow, but was stopped by police. The venue emptied in stunned silence. The next morning, Isabel was discharged from hospital with no findings, no seizure, no trauma, not even low blood sugar. But the damage had been done. To her. Because I had already sent the unedited recordings to social services. Including the one where she rehearsed her collapse 3 times in the lounge, with Gareth filming. She had no idea I'd recorded that rehearsal from behind the kitchen door. And I wasn't done yet. 3 days later, Isabel returned home with a bouquet of lilies and a limp she exaggerated slightly with every step. Gareth drove her back, avoiding eye contact with the neighbors who watched from behind their curtains. I watched, too. From across the street. Behind tinted glass. She didn't know I'd rented a car just for this week. Didn't know I'd spoken with the head teacher at her old school. Didn't know a private investigator had been following her and Gareth since last Thursday. The pieces were all there, now I just had to place them carefully. That night, I received a text. From Gareth. She's not doing well. She won't speak to me. Keeps pacing around the kitchen with that knife again. I stared at the message. My hands didn't shake anymore. I replied, simply. Call the doctor. You're the one who chose this. I didn't expect what happened next. 3 hours later, a frantic knock pounded on my door. It was Gareth, out of breath, stammering. She's gone. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? She ran off. With my car. Took a knife from the drawer. Left her phone behind. 1,000 images ran through my head, dark roads, late-night trains, someone else getting hurt because of her. I phoned the police. 2 hours later, they found her. In a garden behind her old secondary school, curled up in the dew-soaked grass like a child. Knife in hand, untouched. But she wasn't crying. She was humming. A lullaby I used to sing to her when she was 5. She turned to the officers calmly and said, "Tell Mummy the stage is set." They brought her in under section. Gareth begged to visit. I refused. She doesn't need visitors, I told the doctors. She needs supervision. For the next 72 hours, they observed her. She ate all her meals, sang in the shower, read silently for hours. Then she asked to see me. I hesitated. When I entered the visiting room, Isabel looked up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mum," she said sweetly. "Did you like my performance?" I sat across from her. No one applauded. She chuckled. "Oh, but the critics are always late to appreciate true art." I leaned forward. "What's your endgame, Isabel?" Her smile vanished. "You walked away. You erased me." I didn't blink. "No. I stopped playing the role you wrote for me." She tilted her head. "We'll see who the world believes." But this time, the world had already heard my version. Social services had the files. The police had the footage. Gareth's phone was confiscated and searched. And my solicitor had prepped the restraining order. The stage was hers. But the audience had left the theater. Still, I knew this wasn't her final act. Summer arrived in Sussex with a rare burst of sunshine. My new life had begun to take shape, slowly, cautiously, like learning how to walk again after years of limping. I'd moved to a small cottage near the South Downs. Quiet. No one knew me there. Not as that mother. Just Michelle. The woman who hosted a monthly book club and grew her own lavender. But quiet never lasts with Isabel. The first letter arrived in June. Typed. No return address. Just one line. Save the date, the 18th of August. You'll want to see what I've prepared. I didn't reply. The second came in July. A glossy invitation to a charity garden party at Gareth's countryside home in Surrey. My name was on the guest list. So were several influencers, 2 local journalists, and the actor from that BBC crime series she adored. The theme: second chances, a night of redemption and reflection. A fundraiser, she claimed, for self-harm awareness. I stared at the invite. My name was printed in elegant silver cursive: Michelle Carter, guest of honor. She was staging something. And I was expected to play a part. I almost threw it in the bin. But I didn't. Because now, I was ready. I arrived just as the sky turned gold. The garden was lit with fairy lights and delicate bunting. Isabel stood near the marquee, radiant in a cream silk dress. Her arm linked with Gareth's, like a debutante about to deliver her closing act. She saw me. Smiled. A photographer snapped pictures. A small stage had been set beneath the cherry tree. Soft music floated in the air. A hush settled as Isabel took the microphone. She began with a trembling voice, thanking everyone for their support during a difficult year of personal healing. Then, she said my name. She's here tonight. The woman who raised me. Who stood by me. And who, when I pushed her away, came back. Lies. Coated in honey. The crowd turned to me, some clapping. Isabel extended a hand. Mum, would you like to say something? I stepped onto the stage. Paused. Then looked her dead in the eyes. I only came tonight, I said clearly, to ensure the truth is recorded. The whispers began. I held up the file I'd brought, copies of medical reports, school letters, text messages. You lied about your suicide attempts, I said. Manipulated those who loved you. Gaslighted the professionals meant to help you. She paled, but stayed frozen. This isn't about mental health, I continued. It's about control. Performance. Applause. Silence. Then, I walked off the stage. As I passed the table of guests, someone gasped. Another muttered, she's mad. But then Gareth stood up. She's not lying, he said softly. I saw the Google searches. Gasps. All around. Isabel turned on him, eyes wild. You promised. I promised nothing, Gareth said, voice cracking. You told me to fake a hospital invoice. She screamed. Loud. Piercing. The party descended into chaos. I kept walking. Through the gate. Down the gravel path. And as I reached the end of the lane, I heard the sound of sirens. Someone had called the police. The following morning, the headlines had already begun their quiet invasion. Heiress to chaos, Isabel Carter's garden party scandal. A mother's reckoning, Michelle Carter breaks her silence. The tabloids circled like vultures, and though I had done nothing to invite their gaze, my name was everywhere. I ignored it. I changed my number. Deleted social media. Went dark. But Isabel did not. She vanished. 2 days after the garden party, the police informed me she had discharged herself from the mental health facility in Liverpool. No warning. No plan. Simply walked out. CCTV caught her at Euston Station the next night, buying a train ticket to Glasgow. She never boarded. Then silence. No bank activity. No calls to Gareth. No online presence. It felt orchestrated. Gareth and I met once, at a cafe in Camden. He was pale, dishevelled, and nursing a whiskey in his coffee. She's doing it again, he whispered. She's playing dead. What do you mean? She used to do this as a child. Hide in the neighbor's shed, pretending to be kidnapped. Once, she even left a blooded sock behind. You remember? I didn't. I must have been too busy patching up the damage to notice. Where would she go? I asked. He shrugged. She always said she'd fake her death one day. Said it was the only way to make people finally listen. I stared at him. I don't think this time she's pretending, I said. I think she wants us to wonder. And wonder we did. For weeks. Then a letter arrived. Postmarked from the Isle of Skye. Just 2 lines. No signature. The version of me you knew is dead. Please do not search for the one who replaced her. I read it twice. Then burned it. Because I finally understood. She wasn't seeking help. She wasn't even seeking forgiveness. She wanted legacy. She wanted a myth. And myths can only be built if the audience is willing to keep telling the story. So I stopped. I stopped asking questions. I stopped waiting for answers. And for the first time since I held her in the hospital, years ago, I finally let go. But then, 2 months later, I saw her face again. On the front of a magazine. In a music shop in Bath. New name. Dyed hair. Claiming to be an up-and-coming performance artist exploring themes of grief and identity through immersive theatre. The title of the piece. The Girl Who Died Twice. I stood there for what felt like minutes, staring at the glossy magazine cover as if it might vanish if I blinked. Her new name was Isla Winter. The article praised her as an emerging visionary in avant-garde theatre. It spoke of a personal tragedy that shaped her narrative, how she'd overcome death itself to deliver something raw, powerful, and transcendental. They called her a survivor. But no one knew the truth. No one saw the hospitals. The threats. The emotional violence. No one asked where she had gone for those missing weeks, nor why a girl with no official acting background was now selling out black box performances in Shoreditch and Manchester. They loved her story. Because she had rewritten it. And for the first time, I saw it clearly, she hadn't disappeared. She had evolved. Her performance was sold out for a fortnight. Curiosity got the better of me. I bought a ticket. The theatre was small. Intimate. Cold. The stage was bare except for a clawfoot bathtub, filled with dark red water. Isla entered barefoot, wrapped in a translucent gown, and without speaking, slid into the water. Then she looked at us, audience hushed, and began whispering. This is not a resurrection. It is a rebirth. You buried me with your doubt. But I grew in the silence. Gasps. Applause. Some wept. I sat in the back row, arms folded. She had always known how to find an audience. As the lights dimmed, she looked out into the crowd again, briefly, and I saw it. A flicker of recognition. Just one. No pause. No flinch. No break in her lines. But she saw me. And I saw her. We both knew I wouldn't approach her afterward. That I wouldn't call out or stay behind. That was the agreement now. Unspoken. Sacred. She could have her story. And I could have mine. I left before the applause ended. That night, in my flat in Bath, I poured a glass of wine and sat beside the fire, the silence comforting. And I realized something. She had indeed faked a fatal accident, not on the outside, but inside. She killed off the daughter I once knew. And in her place, created someone untouchable. But that was no longer my burden to carry. The trap I'd prepared for her. It wasn't legal. It wasn't financial. It was this. I no longer needed her to change. Because I had changed. And that, I realized, was the one truth she could never rehearse.